Shadow the Hedgehog has returned to a major playable role in the Sonic series for the first time in, oh boy, nearly 20 years? Okay, I mean, not technically, if you count the side games and the spin-offs, but in a major playable role, like a major mainline Sonic game, yeah, it would be Sonic 06. That would be the last time. Sure, we had Sonic Forces with the episode Shadow DLC, but there's been enough jokes made about that game for a decade's worth, so Shadow Generations has released and thankfully has been met to much critical and fandom acclaim. And deservedly so, if you ask me. While this isn't a review video, I really just want to put out my thoughts and opinions about Shadow Generations and express how much I love this game because I adore Shadow Generations. I've been playing it like crazy since the day it came out. And I believe to be as good of a Sonic game as Sonic Mania. I think they're on very equal footing. And believe me, that is amazing that I can say that. The level design of the game, the story, all of that has been praised heavily since the game came out. And I'm not going to be talking too much about that today. I really want to shine light on what I believe to be actually genius moveset design behind Shadow's kit in the game. And why a future playable Shadow really should have a lot of these traits moving forward. So, when you think of a moveset for a Sonic character, a few things likely come to mind instantly. Those being spin jumping, the homing attack, spin dash, just things that allow you to move really fast and fluidly. Thankfully, Shadow has most of these at the start. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the basics, but everything outside the spin dash is here, which we have the boost in its place. All of these traits are things that Sonic himself can do, and if Shadow merely retained these moves and nothing else, was basically just a glorified Sonic clone, then things would be pretty boring. But Sonic Team knew they had to take it further, and oh boy, did they. The first new change to Shadow's moveset here is how his homing attack functions. It still works like any homing attack would, but it's actually Shadow's Chaos Snap ability from Sonic 06, or how you see Shadow teleporting around in the Shadow 05 opening. At first, I thought this was purely for visual flair and nothing else, but then I realized you can actually teleport through laser gates and thin walls. It functions as an actual teleport, which is really, really cool. While this is a curious change, I wish I had more to say about it because you only really have two key acts where this comes into play. And the second one is probably something you'll only see once due to going on the lower path. I wish there was more to say about it. I'm glad it's here, but yeah, this is something I do think that they can do more with in a future game that hopefully has Shadow with this ability. Oh, and it's actually pretty helpful though if you happen to teleport through incoming enemy projectiles. This happens very infrequently, but the fact that it can happen is pretty cool, and also shows that Shadow's hurt box is actually vanishing and reappearing as he teleports. Now we're moving on to Shadow's core chaos powers, and the first one I really want to discuss in depth is the Chaos Spear. Full stop, this is probably my favorite move in the entire game, and I'm going to explain in excruciating detail as to why, but first, a brief history lesson. Chaos Spear is an ability that Shadow has had since his debut title, Sonic Adventure 2, though only seen in the last boss fight with him on the Space Colony arc and multiplayer mode. It showed up again in Shadow 05 during the Super Shadow sequence against Devil Doom, and then once more in a mainline game as a base ability in Sonic 06. Namely, Sonic 06 is the game where Sonic Team made it their first big stride into trying to keep Shadow's playstyle similar to Sonic's, but also having enough differences to make him unique. And despite Sonic 06 being, well, you know. I do like the efforts made there to achieve this, and they brought back elements of that here in Shadow Generations. So, Chaos Spear. It's a long-range projectile that Shadow can use at literally any time. Standing still? Yep. Jumping? Totally. Running? Absolutely. Boosting? You bet. Rail grinding? Well, obviously. My point is, they basically took the concept of Shadow 05 guns, which were tools that you could use on the move without slowing down pace, and applied that to Chaos Spear. Shadow can use Chaos Spear whenever he damn well pleases, without any loss in flow or speed. This also includes animation canceling. Shadow can throw a Chaos Spear and cancel the end lag of the Chaos Spear animation into things like a homing attack. Meaning you can freely spam this ability without any downsides. More on that in a bit. Now, I love how they introduced the player to this ability. For Space Colony Arc Act 1, you don't need to use Chaos Spear at all to clear the level. But then in Act 2, the game gives you this mini tutorial on how to use Chaos Spear without breaking the game's pace, and displaying that it's a tool used for level progression, hitting switches to open doors and make springs appear. Then, after this act, you acquire the Doom Spear, allowing Shadow to fire up to 5 Chaos Spears at once, even though he could always do this naturally before and didn't require a power-up, but whatever. With this, you can open up the big door and proceed onward. What the game is doing here is silently telling the player that future levels will have environmental obstacles that Shadow needs to overcome with the use of Chaos Spear, adding another layer of depth and consideration to the gameplay. What they did next, however, I think was a truly brilliant move. Rail Canyon Act 1 is our following stage, and what is the very first enemy type you encounter? A purple-colored egg beetle with spikes poking out of it. The game even giving you the button prompt associated with Chaos Spear. It's a similar situation to what you saw in the prior act, but the context is different. And now the game is showing you that the Chaos Spear will not only be used for environmental hazards, but also combat as well. If Shadow attempts to attack this enemy with a homing attack without using a Chaos Spear prior, he will take damage and promptly eat dirt. This serves as a one-time slap on the wrist to let the player know to really watch out. This same enemy pops up again a bit later into the level, and this time is over a death pit. Use Chaos Spear and then instantly go into a teleport attack to proceed. While this is quite simple, it's actually very smart. Act 2 of Space Colony has you using Chaos Spear to hit switches and open up doors, while the very next act shows you how this move is used for combat as well, and that you should really pay attention to the enemy so you don't blindly mash the homing attack button constantly. I really like this because the game quickly shows you multiple applications for the same move, and by making certain enemies that are naturally immune to the homing attack, thus requiring a Chaos Spear to open them up and make them vulnerable to said homing attack. It's such a simple, yet great way to engage and keep the player being attentive. The next combat utility we see with Chaos Spear is its ability to defend against incoming enemy projectiles, which is great for the Bio-Lizard battle, especially on hard mode, and it's also good for those flying black arm enemies that shoot the fireballs at you. You can just Chaos Spear them right out of the air, you get a bit of cast control for it. It's really nice as a defense tool as well. Next, we have the Soldiers of the Black Arms. While the Chaos Spear doesn't have an interesting interaction with the normal variants, which purely serve as a glorified springboard for Doom Blast, more on that move later, the other Black Arm enemies are different. The first new type we have is this Barrier Bro, as I call them. The Black Arms that put up these red force fields to halt Shadow's attack. When the barrier is up, you need to use Chaos Spears to destroy it, and then follow up into a Doom Blast. I quite like this enemy as it combines Shadow's abilities in a fun, and frankly very satisfying way. You can also use Chaos Control on these guys prior to the barrier being raised, but that isn't always possible. Plus, sometimes they will send an outwards barrier to you to knock Shadow away, and you need to use your Chaos/Doom spears to cut through them and hit the alien. You can also hit these enemies with Chaos Spears before they put the barrier up. Prime examples being the combat room in Kingdom Valley. After you burst through the window, as you're falling, you can fire off Doom Spears, completely stunning the entire room and just have you go about your business. And another example in Radical Highway Act 1, where you can fire off 2 Chaos Spears here exactly, boost forward, and then go into a Doom Blast, completely nullifying his ability to put up the barrier prior. Another combat use for this move is dealing with these ninja black arms. Really cool enemy design, just saying. This fella here will vanish and then summon doppelgangers to attack Shadow. These blue summon enemies can only be destroyed with Chaos Spear. No other method works beyond using Chaos Control on the summoner, which you may or may not have at the ready when you encounter these guys, especially in Radical Highway where you can't use Chaos Control at all. The other enemies in the game that you can destroy with Chaos Spear are the Mephiles clones, which you can also homing attack too, but the spears just clean up house. Being used for environmental interactivity of varying types, the multiple spots where it's useful, and even vital for combat scenarios, Chaos Spear is a single move that adds so much to the gameplay, and frankly, I think Sonic Team did a damn fine job at implementing it as a core part of Shadow's kit. This takes me to the final point of Chaos Spear that I want to mention, as I've seen some people express a bit of disappointment with it not being able to destroy most enemies in the game. And to that I say, good. It really shouldn't. No, seriously, that is a good thing. Having a 5-shot multi-lock-on projectile that homes in on enemies super easily and destroys said enemies would be insanely broken. Would it be cool as hell? Obviously. But would it snap the balance of the gameplay in half? Which, yes, does matter in a Sonic game. Having limits and restraints to a degree is always important, and I think the Mephiles fight displays exactly why having the Chaos/Doom Spears destroy most enemies in the game would be an unbalanced mess. It would only further pronounce an issue that some people have with Chaos Control, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now, that isn't to say that Chaos Spear should never be a move that deals damage. Not at all. I just think that in the space of Shadow Generations, it's overall better for the game if it doesn't. A perfect gameplay style where Chaos Spear destroys enemies would be the Adventure style, which Sonic 06 has displayed with Chaos Lance, and also what P06 shows as well, allowing Shadow to charge up his Chaos Spears briefly to unleash spears that damage enemies. Under this context, I think the ability destroying enemies is perfectly balanced and even better for the game. So kudos for Chaos X on that, and I plan to do a video on P06 at some time because man, that game is fun. Anyway, moving on to the next ability.
Chaos Control!
Chaos Control. One of the most iconic powers in the entire franchise, and it's here in what I believe its full glory. Chaos Control is undoubtedly Shadow's most recognizable ability, with Chaos Spear also being one of his signature moves, of course. But Chaos Control was always that move, you know? While its actual use has been debated regarding if it's a teleport or a time stop, it's both, but whatever. Here we get to see it used for a wide range of methods. First, I actually want to highlight its color. The green shade we are treated to upon each use is the same color that we see in Sonic Adventure 2 when Shadow first uses the ability. A very neat touch. What makes Chaos Control mechanically so interesting and fun is how the player can make their own routing and experiment with the best times to use the ability, and even learn that using it at the wrong time results in a waste of time or punishment. I like this. You can't haphazardly use this power on a whim, and there is thought involved to when the best time to freeze time itself is. Not to mention, using it also completely restores Shadow's boost gauge, which is great for meter management. Then, there's the trails of chaos energy that Shadow can take during Chaos Control. I quite like these because it functions as a light speed dash of sorts, and is also a nod to Chaos Control as seen in Shadow 05, where you would zip ahead a set distance over the stage. While this isn't exactly the same, I think it's a nice reference to it. Additionally, what I think might be the coolest use of chaos control in the entire game is how it interacts with the boss fights, namely the finishers for each of them. I love these moments because it shows just how much fun the developers were having while making this game. Launching the massive energy ball back at the Bio-Lizard gave me such a feeling of Dragon Ball, which makes sense considering the inspiration that franchise has had on Sonic for so long. I especially love the finisher you can go for against Metal Overlord, who can counter your own chaos control with his, which is a great continuity from Sonic Heroes, but that doesn't prevent other objects from being affected by it. Shadow can still hit the debris and cause massive damage to Metal, and ending the fight in this way is simply perfect. And of course, the chaos control finisher against Mephiles speaks for itself. So much style here. Love these additions and the extra flair they bring to the boss battles. The upped level of cool factor Sonic Team want these games to exude after Frontiers is extremely apparent, and I'm here for it. Chaos Control also stops the timer of the stage, which has been met with some complaints? I don't get this complaint, honestly. I think it's a welcome change to the typical speedruns we see in a Sonic game, as it allows you to either make up for lost time or interact more with the game's mechanics and build up Chaos Control. It's an addition, similar to Chaos Spear, that encourages creative use and routing, even more so in a way. And it's funny, those who complain about Chaos Spear not destroying enemies in the game also are the ones who complain about Chaos Control stopping the timer, which if the spears destroyed enemies, it would make obtaining Chaos Control even easier. Anyway, that wraps up Chaos Control. Let's move on. Alright, finally on to the Doom powers, and, well, I don't have a ton to say about them outside of Doom Blast, but firstly, Doom Spear. Okay, so everything I would have said about Doom Spear are things I already explained in the Chaos Spear section earlier. Basically the same exact things apply, just Shadow fires multiple instead of one. I'll say, it's the Doom power the player likely uses throughout most of the game, regardless if they realize it or not. But a lot of times a normal Chaos Spear will do. So my take, this should have been what Chaos Spear was capable of doing since the moment you boot the game up. I mean, Shadow has displayed so many times throughout this franchise that he can throw several Chaos Spears at once. Hell, in Sonic Generations during his boss fight, he does just that. Whatever. Nitpicking aside, it's a great Doom power purely by proxy of it being Chaos Spear but more. Again, my thoughts on it are the same as it is Chaos Spear, so it's excellent even if redundant. Next up is Doom Surf. So this power is pretty neat, but really just that, neat. You can do some cool speed tricks with it, like the spinning attack in Kingdom Valley, and I like that you can give yourself a burst of speed upon landing in the water and pressing the boost button at the right time. I didn't know that until after my first playthrough. I would say maybe after my 10th time of even playing Kingdom Valley was when I realized that. It's a pretty cool thing. Beyond that, it's one of the two powers I think is less of an extension of Shadow's core abilities and more of a tool, which is fine, just not super exciting. It looks pretty cool though. Though the next one is much more exciting. Doom Morph, baby. Alright, I actually love Doom Morph. Yeah, it's weird and kind of quirky, and the game doesn't really give the best job of explaining how it works, which many have already complained about, but oh man. When it clicks, it's really fun. Makes me wish we had more stages to use it in, but alas, my favorite aspect of it is the boost jump you can do, getting serious airtime and distance. I think the idea of giving Shadow some Spider-Man-like swings is a cool concept, and it fits a more adventure-style gameplay that Shadow was always associated with, so I dig it. Then we got the Doom Wings. Gameplay-wise, it's a super form. Requires 50 rings to activate, drains rings after doing so, grants invincibility, and allows Shadow to glide. I think Doom Wings is a fine addition. best used in the white space, and I don't ever do the versions of the stages with the wings. I prefer the normal gameplay of Shadow Generations. That said, this is a very cool power-up, and I love that Sonic Team gave us 2 versions of each act. One with the Doom Wings disabled, and another with them enabled. Very wise choice here, and I think that other games that have a structure similar to Shadow Generations should follow this with super forms in the future, including having their own leaderboards. Alright, finally, Doom Blast. Oh boy, Doom Blast. This and Chaos Spear are the primary 2 abilities I believe Shadow must keep for future appearances. As for why, well, Doom Blast is obtained early on, and it's such a natural evolution of Shadow's most basic ability, the homing attack. It's somewhat similar to the Chaos attack from Sonic 06, no doubt inspired from it, but with a twist that's incredibly fun. Being able to launch foes up in the air for an ass-kicking and means of travel is one of the coolest things we've seen mechanically in a Sonic game. While the Doom Blast will always give a recommended path to take upon launching an enemy up, that's all it is, a recommendation, not a requirement. You can freely aim the poor souls almost anywhere so long as it's in front of Shadow. I believe the 2 stages that are the best at showing off Doom Blast are Kingdom Valley Act 1 and Radical Highway Act 1. In Kingdom Valley, you can use this fella here and boot him into the glass window, dropping Shadow into a combat room that you can handle with some Doom Spears and teleporting around, or Chaos Control if you got it at the ready. However, this is the suggested path, like I said. Once you get creative, you can entirely skip this combat room by aiming to the left and sending our friend soaring, allowing you to go around this structure entirely and reach the eagle awaiting us. I feel this was certainly intended and experimented with by the devs, but for what might not have been is this skip here, where you can land on the structure itself and use our fun spear gliding technique to make it over. Then we got Radical Highway Act 1, one of my absolute favorite stages in the game, and the Doom Blast shortcuts you can take here are just so damn cool. Here, watch this. See that? The fact that I can even do that is incredibly cool, and shows that the devs trusted us to figure out stuff like this, but also kept it easy for beginners or people who will be more casual at the game with the suggested lock-on points. This clip also highlights why I think Chaos Spear and Doom Blast work hand in hand, especially with these enemies. I love these guys because in most instances, you'll need to utilize Chaos or Doom Spears to either get a stun to prevent the barrier, or to destroy the barrier, then go into Doom Blast. It's such a seamlessly cool and fun way to engage the player with the mechanics and Shadow's abilities. This seamlessness is vital to not only Shadow Generations, but Sonic games in general. Sonic Mania introduced the drop dash, and it became beloved by so many players because of how natural it was to utilize. It just clicks. Likewise, Shadow's powers such as Chaos Control, Chaos Spear, and Doom Blast are mutually abilities that just make sense in the context of how they are used, while providing creative and fun uses for each of them that developers intended. These levels are designed in such a way to encourage or even require usage of these abilities, but they typically aren't overblown. The same situation doesn't always prevent itself despite using the same core ability to solve it, but how you solve it varies on the context itself. With this philosophy, Sonic Team crafted abilities for Shadow which I believe should be mainstays in his moveset for the future. And with that, we're at the conclusion to this video. I want to give my genuine thanks for all of you who have made it this far through all my rambling. And if you will allow, I will ramble a little bit more, and I just want to once again affirm how much I absolutely adore this game. If that wasn't already obvious that I love Shadow Generations, then yeah, I'm gonna reaffirm it. For me, it's the best Sonic game since the original Sonic generations and Sonic Mania. I said it earlier in the video that I believe Shadow Generations to be on basically equal footing to that of Sonic Mania, and I firmly hold that opinion. Obviously, the two games are different. You know, Sonic Mania is a classic Sonic game, and Shadow Generations is very much a boost formula game, but it also feels more like a hodgepodge of the boost formula mixed with the adventure style, which I think fits Shadow perfectly, because Shadow, you know, is always associated with the adventure games in that era. And I think keeping him with that association is still important to his character, which, by the way, this game absolutely nails Shadow's character, both in terms of actual characterization and his story, and of course, gameplay-wise, his mechanics and all that, which you've heard me ramble about for over 20 minutes now. I think the abilities that he has in this game really need to be a mainstay for him, so he can stand out between Sonic for later games, which, man, I hope that this game sets a precedence for what is going to be in the future for this franchise, because this is the quality and polish that the Sonic franchise not only needs, but deserves. You know, this is such a iconic franchise, and Sonic's track record is muddy, you know? But this game gives a lot of hope for the future, and man, I hope they continue to nail it like they did with this one. I really do. I really, really do. But, if you can't tell, this isn't scripted. Well, yeah, I'm telling you now. Anyway, again, you made it this far into the video. I really want to give you my genuine thanks. I'm extremely grateful for it, especially considering that this is the first kind of video that I'm doing on this channel, this analysis type of video, and me rambling about games that I love, which this certainly won't be my last. I intend to do a lot of Sonic content in the future, as well as The Legend of Zelda. I adore The Legend of Zelda. That's my favorite video game franchise of all time. And I intend to do a lot on Resident Evil and the Souls games, the From Software Souls games as well, because I love those games too. So lots of things I have upcoming and planned that I love to do, because I had a lot of fun making this video, and I know I'm gonna have a lot of fun making videos on both Sonic and those other titles that I mentioned. So, you know the whole YouTube jazz. Like, comment, subscribe if you want. I would appreciate it. It can only help and would continue to motivate me to make content like this if you enjoyed it. But even if you don't do any of those things, I'm just very happy that you decided to listen to a guy like me ramble on and on about something that I love. So, again, you have my full thanks. For now, I bid you all a good farewell, and I'll see you next time.